I think we were a pretty good team together, me and you, running marketing and sales. And I feel like we didn't fight really like most marketing and sales teams do. Like looking back, why do you think that was? What made it work?
I mean, I think we had such a good. It never felt we were all on the same team, and I think people said that all the time. Like one team, one dream. I remember reps would join, and it's like because it goes back to like no finger pointing. Like we are all in this together, and we're going to focus on how do we grow this pie versus the traditional sort of MQL versus SQL. I even remember early on we didn't talk about attribution for the first few years, which is traditionally everybody's like, oh, focus on your attribution and really get it right. And we were like, we're just going to grow the business because we know even for outbound, we knew that we couldn't get to outbound unless marketing was out there, marketing to these folks quarters ahead, years ahead, right? To create that sort of air cover. And so I think that sort of philosophy, and kudos to Jack for giving us that autonomy to just sort of focus on building the business versus like getting over focused on sort of resourcing and attribution and where does the budget go. And I think that really helped us in building it together. And yeah, I think that was the most fun part because we didn't do it the sort of traditional SaaS way. We just did it our way. And people came on and they were like, wait, is this outbound? Well, typically in traditional sense, this is not how outbound is defined. But we were growing the business. Ultimately, that was the testament. It was like we're 3Xing and 2Xing. And I think that was a lot to do with the folks you hired, the folks we had on the sales team. And I think you and I being completely aligned in our focus on growing business. And I love that you and the marketing team had so much accountability to revenue, which wasn't typical, but I love that. Like when revenue was down, I knew you were stressed as I was stressed. Like you weren't like, oh, I'm going to go focus on something else. You're like, no, we got to grow revenue and I'm stressed. What do we do? So I think that really helped because we had each other's backs.
Yeah, I think my mentality the whole time was just how could Lattice be successful? I didn't really care about whether it was marketing or sales and how we sort of get there. And like, yeah, companies. It's funny you mentioned that 'cause, yeah, companies spend so much time just counting the beans and spend so much process trying to figure out who goes what. And like, I think we were early to understanding like the B2B buyer journey is not just linear. It's not just outbound or inbound. It's probably both. And like the outbound person saw a marketing thing, and then the outbound person came inbound later, and it's like you just end up fighting about like literally nothing.
Yeah.
It's like it's funny how what companies trip themselves up. Switching gears, to like building a career in sales, especially as a woman, there's a huge gender and diversity gap in tech, and as a woman in tech yourself, who's risen to a CRO and C-suite, I'm curious, like, what advice you give to other women in sales and more broadly, like who want the same things sort of you've gotten. What advice would you give?
Yeah, I think it's hard to get advice because I think it's so personal. I remember when I first moved into management, that's when I realized that there is this huge gap. Because when I was a rep, there was like, enough women on the floor and it didn't feel like the gap existed. Move into management and I was like, wow, I'm like one or two women on so many calls. And the higher you go, it was 90% of the time it was like you're the only woman on every call. And over time you like I don't even notice it anymore. But and the representation gap is real. But I think having a strong why around why I'm doing this, like has always sort of kept me going. Because when I first moved into when I was a rep and I became successful, I was like, I'm never doing any other job. This is amazing. I make a lot of money. I can get my job done in 5 hours a day. Like, why would I do anything else? And then at some point I was like, I love coaching other people. And so management became much more enticing to me. And so I did that and I was like, this is awesome. I've got my team, I've got my culture. Why would I do anything else? And then over time, I was like, if I really want to change how sales orgs are built from the ground up, I've got to have a bigger seat at the table. Like I can't, I can be this manager and be happy in what I'm doing, but I really want to help change the game of how sales orgs are built. And so that became my why for almost a decade. And it was helpful in moments of where I was like, do I really want to do this? Like, so I think having a strong why, like why you're doing something really served me. And I didn't know every 18 months, I was like, am I enjoying this? Yes, no. What am I enjoying? How do I do more of that? Like I wasn't someone who knew early I wanted to be CRO or even management. And, I think that surprises people because everyone's like, I knew I wanted to be CRO. And I'm like, I wasn't that person. Where building a sales org where a younger me would have felt like I was having more fun. I felt more comfortable being myself. Um, and yeah, I hope more women continue to embrace sort of what makes them special and their why and run their own race.